You ever look up at the night sky and see what looks like a really, really fast-moving star? Well, there's a pretty good chance you were actually looking at this, the International Space Station. And it's so much more than just a machine or a satellite. For more than 20 years, it's been our city in the stars, humanity's only home in the cosmos. So let's get into this incredible story. To really wrap your head around the ISS, let's just start with this number, 15 and a half. That's how many times the station circles the entire Earth, every single day. I mean, it's screaming along at 17,000 miles per hour. For the crew on board, that means they get to see a sunrise and a sunset every 93 minutes. It's just this constant, relentless motion right above our heads. Which, of course, begs the question, right? How on earth did we, a species that's pretty much stuck to the ground, manage to build a permanent home, a place where people live continuously, in one of the most extreme environments imaginable? Well, the answer is this amazing story of ambition, of science, and some really surprising partnerships. To really get a feel for the ISS, you've got to understand the sheer scale of it. We're not talking about some little outpost here. This thing is nothing short of a mega structure, a true city in the sky. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. Out of everything we have ever built, all the bridges, monuments, skyscrapers, this thing floating in space is the single largest and most complex object humanity has ever constructed. It's about as long as an American football field and weighs around 450,000 kilograms. It's just massive. And the price tag? Whew, try $150 billion. And that was the estimate back in 2010. This wasn't just a project. It was an unprecedented investment of money, resources, and just raw human brainpower. It really goes to show what's possible when we decide to aim high. So who put up all that money and effort? Well, the story of how it got built is almost as impressive as the station itself. It's a tale of how bitter Cold War rivals came together to create something absolutely extraordinary, a truly unlikely alliance. Okay, so picture this. It's the early 1990s. You've got the two big superpowers with their own competing plans. The US was working on something called Space Station Freedom. At the same time, the Soviet Union, which would soon become Russia, was planning its own station, Mir 2. But here's the thing. Both projects were in big trouble. They were way over budget, politicians were losing interest, and they were both on the verge of getting canceled. And then in 1993, something pretty historic happened. The US and Russia announced they were going to merge their programs. Just like that, the intense rivalry of the space race was transformed into a partnership. So in 1998, the first piece, Russia's Zarya module, went up. Just a few weeks later, America's Unity module connected to it. And then in November of 2000, the first crew floated aboard. And get this, we've had people living in space every single second of every day ever since. And that original partnership just kept growing. It wasn't just the US and Russia anymore. It blossomed into this massive, incredible collaboration between 5 major space agencies, representing 15 different countries. It is, without a doubt, the most politically complex and yet somehow most cooperative space program in history. But why? Why build this thing in the first place? Well, at its very heart, the ISS is a science lab. But it's a laboratory unlike any other, one that lets us do research that is fundamentally impossible to do down here on Earth. The secret ingredient is microgravity. That constant state of free fall changes the rules of physics. It completely rewrites them. And that opens up these amazing new frontiers in all kinds of fields, from studying what long-term spaceflight does to the human body to inventing brand new materials. And we're talking about some seriously mind-bending science. One of the crown jewels of the station is the alpha magnetic spectrometer. It's basically this huge particle detector that's looking for things like dark matter and antimatter. And in 2013, it found something odd, an unexplained spike in certain cosmic rays that scientists are still trying to figure out. This is the kind of fundamental science that can change everything. So how different are things up there really? Well, take something super simple, like a flame. On Earth, you know the shape. Heat rises, so it pulls the flame up into that classic teardrop. But in microgravity, there is no up, so a flame becomes a perfect little ball, a sphere of fire. And by studying something as basic as that, we can learn a ton about way more complex things, like how to make engines more efficient.
Okay, so the science is cool, but what about the people? What's it actually like to call this place home while you're whipping around the planet at 17,000 miles an hour?
Well, life on the ISS is structured. And I mean incredibly structured. An astronaut's day is planned out, often in 5-minute increments. From the moment they wake up, it's a packed schedule of exercise, running experiments, and just doing maintenance to keep the station running. All of it coordinated with controllers on the ground. Every single moment is planned. And that kind of life creates some intense psychological pressure. I mean, just listen to this quote from veteran cosmonaut Valery Rumin. It's pretty stark. You're isolated, you're in a confined space with the same few people for months on end, and you're under constant stress. Keeping the crew happy, healthy, and working as a team is one of the most critical parts of any mission. And you know, it isn't just professional astronauts up there anymore. The station has started opening its airlock to private citizens. The official term they use is spaceflight participant. Now, you've probably heard the term space tourist, and there's been some debate about that, but many of these individuals are actually conducting real scientific research, which is kind of blurring the lines and giving us a peek at a new, commercial future in space. But here's the reality. The station can't last forever. The oldest parts are now well over 2 decades old, which brings us to our final and maybe biggest question. What comes after the ISS?
The date to keep in your head is 2030. Right now, that's the year the International Space Station is scheduled to end its operational life. All the partners have agreed to keep the lights on until then, but it will mark the end of a truly remarkable era.
So how exactly do you retire a 450-ton space station? You can't just leave it there. The plan is to perform a controlled deorbit. They'll use a special vehicle to guide it down into the atmosphere, over the most remote place on Earth, an area in the South Pacific known as the Spacecraft Cemetery. It's a way to make sure it has a safe and fiery end. Now, this does not mean we're done with having people in low Earth orbit, not by a long shot. What's changing is the whole model. NASA is shifting from being an owner and an operator to being a customer. They're going to pay private companies to build new stations and then just rent space on them. The future of living and working in orbit is going commercial. When it's all said and done, the legacy of the ISS is just monumental. It showed us all that international cooperation could achieve what seemed impossible. It turned Cold War competitors into partners. But as this incredible symbol of unity prepares for its final, fiery descent, it leaves us with one heck of a question. In a new era of private companies and shifting global politics, who is going to carry that torch of collaboration forward?